My goal with today's video is to share with you the truth about scaling an ad account on Meta to about $10,000 a day in ad spend. In the last 7 or so days, we increased this ad account spend by about 45% in that span of a week, and still managed to increase revenue by 35%, which meant an extra $20,000 in profit at the end of that week for this ad account. So I'll share with you my learnings in the next few minutes, so stay tuned for more. And if you're new to the channel, you don't yet know who I am, my name is Justin, and I'm the founder of paidadvertising.com, an online marketing growth firm specializing in elevating thriving brands by simplifying e-commerce growth. We've profitably spent over $12 million on ads in the last 3 years across our 70+ partners. So let's get straight into today's video. Now, this is an ad account right here that I want to show you over a couple days basis. So the actual case study itself happened in the last week of December, not because the client actually had a sale, just because leading up to Q1 is their strongest quarter overall for this brand type. So if I look at the end of December, so I look at the last week overall, the last 7 days, and then what I'll do is I'll compare actually to the previous dates to show you right here. Awesome. So let me compare that. You can see that ROAS for the last 7 days was 3.99. We spent $40K on ads. We essentially rose all the way up to $167,000 in purchase conversion value. And on that last day, essentially, of this time period, we're at 9.3K in ad spend, whereas we actually started the week at about 4.5K in ad spend. So let me show you how that looks like. So I want to compare that to the previous dates. I'll update that right here, and I'll actually show you the columns right there. So if I look at purchase conversion value, increased by about 36% in that time period. If I look at amount spent, it increased by about 44%. But now you might think spend increased more than essentially the purchase conversion value. So did that mean a ROAS dropped? A little bit. In fact, ROAS dropped by about 5% if I recall. There you go, 5.7%. But because of the increase in purchase conversion value, it made up for that. I did a quick math here with ChatGPT to show you essentially based on the client's margin, which are very, very good. They're working with gross margins nearing 80%. Considering the revenue for the original period was about 122,000 and the ad spend for the original period was about 29K, meaning that the profit for that original period was about 74K, whereas now the profit is about 98K. So they still profited more, even though essentially ROAS slightly went down because of that increase in sales volume, right? I share that because I think it's very important to consider that when scaling an account, you want to make sure that your spend to ROAS ratio stays at a healthy level. It's normal and natural usually that as you increase spend, you'll meet a certain threshold or resistance point where ROAS starts decreasing. And that's okay, is what I'm saying. It's okay so as long as it doesn't decrease lower than the gap that you need to keep to still make more profit than you were at the previous ad spend threshold, which in this case we're good, right? A 5% decrease in ROAS with in this case here, a 45% increase in ad spend is negligible essentially. And that client still makes an increase in profit is where I'm going with this. Now, I want to show you a couple different things that actually led us to make mistakes and we actually could have pushed this account more. My goal with this channel obviously is not just to share with you the good, it's also to share you the learnings that I'm seeing with ad accounts. And one of those is the importance of comparing the different attribution windows you can have within Meta. So let me clear this comparison right here and let me essentially show you the week prior. So if I show you the week prior in the start of the week, so as an example, the Monday to the Wednesday, ROAS is sitting at about 4.05. Now, if I show you Thursday and Friday, ROAS is at 5.5. We saw an increase in ROAS towards the end of the week, whereas the client specifically told us, hey guys, typically leading up to Christmas, we're seeing sales go down, so it'd be good to drop budgets. But data indicated otherwise. So we're like, you know what? Perhaps we can scale. So what it is that we did on the weekend itself. So let me show you essentially here and let me compare that to the previous day and I'll compare the ad spend right there. On Sunday the 24th, essentially we increased spend by 20%, right? Typically we'll want to increase spend by no more than 20% on a given day. And that's what I've been claiming on the channel this entire time, right? If you're doing good with your ads, you should not increase ad spend more than 20%, especially at this scale, because anything more than that could kind of throw off the balance of the account. So I want to show you something right here as an example. If I picked one of these campaigns, I went to one of the live ad sets. Let me just go to ad set right here. See some of them that got some spend. I'll go down. There you go. One thing that Meta now released, which I think is also very useful, is what is the maximum amount of ad spend you can push to this ad set right now without getting out of the learning phase, which in this case, you can see it's definitely more than a 20% increase. It doesn't mean you need or should get all the way up to this ad spend. It just means you can if you wanted to. Typically, I'm still being a little bit cautious and going no more than 20% in a day. One thing I want to address before I start getting comments on that is why is the account structured the way that it is right now? Why isn't using the DCT model that I've been preaching on the channel? That's because this is a new client that we just started to take care of in December. We haven't had the chance yet to restructure the entire account. We're slowly transitioning them to it. We have 2 shopping campaigns essentially right now that started like optimizing, because talking about the DCT model, one thing I've also said now on the channel is that some accounts I'm transitioning away from DCT more towards Advantage Plus shopping if I can, and we're actually seeing some pretty decent results with the shopping campaigns on that account, actually not in that time period in itself, but overall. Essentially, if I showed you this, 25 to the 26th overall, my 2 shopping campaigns really aren't doing too bad, considering the client's goal was to hit above 2.5 in that time period. So with that said, I'll actually keep you guys posted and most likely post a part 2 to this video once we fully transition this account to the DCT model, especially on an evergreen basis. We still consolidated the account to a max where right now they have 12 ad campaigns running, but they have many different collections and genders of products on their website, which meant that currently there's one market only, it's the US, and there's 1 campaign per collection. So even though there's 12 campaigns, the account is kind of as consolidated as it can get, honestly, considering the amount of campaigns they have, and they have quite a low AOV in product price. So that makes it that with the current ad spend they have, we can spread out the spend across 12 campaigns. Each campaign is still spending enough on a day-to-day basis, honestly, to have a pretty fair shot at getting conversions. So it's not like we're spreading our spend too thin also at this stage. But once again, for those of you that have been following closely the DCT model, as well as me kind of sharing about Advantage Plus, I'll be testing both. So far, we have Advantage Plus campaigns now live, and we're kind of seeing the results from them, but I'll essentially be sharing with you when we implement DCTs. So some of the stuff I'm sharing with you now next actually in there is why, as mentioned earlier, you need to look into the different attribution models. Because if I had looked, and which is what we did, is essentially if we had just taken for face value the default 70 click 1-day view model, it looked like ROAS increased, right? But then let me switch to Google Analytics. If I actually look at the same time period right here, like sales aren't really up at all. In fact, they're down 1.4%, but they're pretty stable. I'm sharing with you Google Analytics because we don't have access to the client's backend, but with their developer, essentially they showed us that it's actually 95% accurate. So all that to tell you, you can trust these numbers, which I know some accounts I typically wouldn't trust GA4's accuracy, but all in all, you can see that the sales volume was somewhat down for that time period. So you're like, all right, sales volume is kind of down, ROAS is up by quite a lot. But if I actually switch, so this is where it becomes interesting. If you go to columns, you go to compare attribution settings, and you would compare, as an example, 70 click. 70 click is there's a big difference between the 4.85 here and the 70 click that we have, which means there's a lot of attribution coming up in that 1-day view window. So if I actually even showed you now, instead of 70 click, I also show you 1-day click. So let me show you the 2 comparisons. You can see 1.77 on a 1-day click basis. And we started increasing spend towards the end of that week, as I showed you, by 20% because we saw ROAS increasing. That is mistake number 1. Don't increase spend because your 70 click 1-day view ROAS necessarily looks better. Look overall to see, is my sales volume actually up for that time period? If it is, then you can trust the 70 click 1-day view. You don't even need to necessarily look at 1-day click nor 70 click to tell you that. Just look at sales. Are my sales also up for that given day? If they're not, then this is where we started looking and asking the clients, since we also have access to their Klaviyo, we looked into it. They had sent a lot of emails in that time period for kind of a promotion only for returning customers. So guess what? Any of the returning customers that saw our ads in the last 24 hours had an attribution lift essentially on the ads account, which now if I actually clear these 2 columns right there for attribution, and I show you essentially what, kind of had to happen, right? Saturday in itself, 4.09, still doing pretty good. Sunday, we're like, fuck it, let's scale on Sunday. Now, ROAS plummets to 2.6. Then if we look at Monday, ROAS plummets again to 2.08. We're like, whoa, what's going on right here, right? Why is this dropping down? So now if I look at the next day, we slightly reduced ad spend because we're like, look, we knew sales were going to come up from the year-over-year data of the client on the 26th onwards. Historically, luckily, this is a client that's been in business for many, many years. They have years of data on both Facebook, Google Ads, and their Google Analytics. So we had a lot of previous data to look into. We knew sales were technically going to go up on the 26th. We stayed conservative with the ad spend because we wanted to make up for the poorer performance of the last 2 days. And then we started essentially slowly increasing. So about $100, so barely nothing on the 27th. I'll show you essentially the comparison for the previous day in ad spend. So here, 2% increase, literally pretty much nothing. 28th onwards is where it becomes interesting. 25% increase in ad spend on the 28th. If we go to the 29th, 12% increase in ad spend. On Saturday, 17% increase in ad spend. And finally on the 31st, another 25% increase in ad spend. And now you're asking, what did that result in terms of revenue? if I'm now going back to Google Analytics and you can see kind of the revenue right here, here's how it resulted, essentially a 35% increase in revenue, which is very similar to what we would have seen here in the ads manager, right? If I go from the 25th to the 31st, the same time period, and I go to purchase conversion value, guess what? 36% increase in purchase conversion value for a 35% increase in revenue on the store overall, which now that's a lot more accurate, which that tells us, in other words, I can make a conclusion that if my revenue proportionally increased both on platform and off platform by the same metric, it's safe to say that the ads had a lot to do with that increase in revenue. Whereas on the flip side, if what I showed you earlier, essentially from the period of the 20th to the 22nd, and on the flip side, essentially that's the revenue increase on the ads manager isn't proportional to the revenue increase in the back end, that probably is an attribution mishap, quote unquote. And I'll put that in big quotes because I think it's still important for Meta to see this one-day view data so that they can learn from it, as chances are, if somebody's still bought within 24 hours of seeing an ad, they're a good data point for Meta to remember and learn from. I'm still for having that data shown in the ads manager. I'm just saying that you have to be mindful of that when scaling to the scale that we're doing right here. One of the last points I want to address is the ad set that spent the most. This one, it says retarget. I'm going to show you it's actually not fully retargeting. It's more re-engagement. You can see that also with our campaign tags when it says and see its new customers. So looking into that right here, you can see that there's a lot of lookalikes, and then the rest, it's Meta's way now with catalog campaigns of actually showing ads to people that took action on the website but didn't take another action. Like in this case, all products added to cart but didn't purchase over the last 90 days, or all products viewed but essentially not purchased. So that's essentially kind of the ad sets that we had right there, which once again were some of the ad sets previously set up from the client in that time period that we just decided to scale since they were still doing good. My thing, and kind of the recap the learnings in this video, number one, when I come into an ad account, I'm not just gonna scrap everything that's performing right now and just implement the DCT model. That never is going to be what I do. I'll still adapt my approach to whatever approach is live on the account. I'll, as we did here, still consolidate the ad account, number one. Number two, I'll still try and scale whatever structure I can scale right now. I'm not just gonna let it die off. I'll still wants to incentivize performance, right? Like if something works, it works, but I'll try and build alongside it, which is kind of what we're doing now with the shopping campaigns, which started to, again, perform slowly but surely in that time period. So we're nurturing these campaigns, and our goal is that within a couple of months, we'll be able to kind of shift the balance of the account from this bloated account structure to a more consolidated structure with either shopping and or DCT model based ad campaigns. Second learning is that ad account, most of the sales come from catalog campaigns. The two times I've scaled an ad account that fasts essentially in a non kind of Black Friday, Cyber Monday period, both times funnily were in a very similar time. So last year I posted a video essentially with one of our clients, Code Word, that we did something similar. We scaled them up to 14K essentially a day in the middle of January because of a Super Bowl offer we had running. Essentially that time that I did that, it primarily was with catalog campaigns again. So I'm telling you this because I'm realizing a pattern here where most of the time whenever we scale hard, catalog campaigns are some of the campaigns that scale the hardest within this time period. Catalog campaigns for the most part are product aware campaigns, and the commonality between both of these accounts that scaled quite fast in a short amount of time is that they also had other campaigns that were indexed on static and video ads. So where am I going with that? Both of these accounts were a little bit more full funnel / encompassing in the way that we've structured these in the way that we've structured the ad assets on these accounts. So I posted a video recently talking about how you probably don't need to go full funnel experience when you're just starting out. Perhaps simply product aware could work for you. That is true, and I said up to a certain point, whereas once you start scaling up your ad spend, you kind of have to create your own market. Well, in both of these cases, right, when you're spending almost $10,000 in a day, you are probably at the top of your market overall. I mean, there are people that still spend more than that, but if you're in the top 5% of your market for sure. So you have to go full funnel. So an account like this, although budget is very indexed on the catalog based campaigns, the creative side of pretty much every other campaign is static and videos. So like the statics and the videos are the ones where they're kind of hooking the people first. They're the ones where people discover the brand for the most part, and then essentially once they took action, you can see with ad sets like such here, right, like our products added added to cart but didn't purchase, this is where they get quote unquote re-engaged slash retargeted. They haven't bought yet, right? So it's not fully retargeting, it's more re-engaging, but they get re-engaged because now they're product aware. So they took action on the site, they discovered the brand with a static slash video, and now the product aware ads are coming in to swoop in the win essentially with these re-engagement ads. And finally, I think this is just proof of the fact that, I've been speaking about scaling no more than 20% a day. This is me kind of doing it in action, right? We did about 20%, then 25%, 12%, 25%. So all in all, if you look at the scale of these couple of days, average is about 20%. So that's a pretty good number, and the account sustained it, as you can see. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I know a lot of you guys watching this video sometimes are lower in ad spend, and it's good for you to see kind of what it takes and some of the process at least that it takes to scale up to such an ad spend level. I know this wasn't the most in-depth video in terms of strategy and tactics taken, but the learnings that I recapped just a couple seconds ago were kind of the main points I wanted to discuss here today. I will show you more in depth in the future once we've made a transition more to DCTs and Advantage Plus shopping campaigns, but have confidence in that 20% a day scale. And just because some random guy on YouTube tells you that DCTs or Advantage Plus campaigns work, it doesn't mean that other campaign types don't work, and you shouldn't just scrap your entire ad account and start from scratch again. You should build alongside it, and that's what I want you to retain from watching today's video. If you do want to learn more about this DCT model that I've been talking about today, then check out other videos on the channel for some more useful marketing tips. And if you want to partner with a paid ads Meta, TikTok, and Google partner, click the link down below and book in a call to speak with our team at paidadvertising.com today. So I'll be seeing you in the next video. Ciao.